Twitter have come out with these new guidelines, these new labels that they're going to be implementing from now on to essentially discredit news outlets that don't conform to Uncle Sam's foreign policy. So let me show you their announcement. So Twitter support says, when it comes to conversations with government and state-affiliated media accounts on Twitter, we're helping to make the experience more transparent. We'll now use 2 distinct profile labels for these types of accounts, so you can easily identify them and their tweets. So what do we have here? Let's take a closer look. Aha, U.S. government account, Russia state-affiliated media. Do you notice the subtle imagery? Like this one has the flag and it's full of color and life and vibrant. And this one is bland and boring and bleak. Wow. And so what does AOC say? What does AOC say? She says, I appreciate that Twitter is a platform that's at least trying to stop disinformation, verifying news outlets, etc. Stopping misinformation isn't about sitting around for years debating ideas. It's about testing tactics, trying ideas to find what's effective. Just as purveyors of misinformation are constantly testing new techniques, so should we in verifying info. Not everything we try is going to work. Is a ban on political ads the best route? Probably not. But at least there's a willingness to recognize how dangerous misinformation is and act. Oh, you mean like your government's propaganda? Yeah, I recognize how dangerous you people are, so I'm acting. I expose you. Now, nonetheless, the implications of this are quite stark. Do you remember last week when I interviewed Rania? I had the pleasure of having her on. She is amazing. And she told me about how her company is suing Facebook because they wrote under her name. Remember, she does Soapbox and In the Now. Under her Facebook page, they wrote Russian state-backed media. I'm paraphrasing, but Russia state-affiliated media, implying that she is working for the Russian government or backed by the Russian government. Complete and utter nonsense, baseless false accusation. Complete nonsense. So she's suing them for defamation, and I think this is great, and I hope she wins, inshallah, God willing, because this is going to be good for all journalists. So that it sets a legal precedent that they can't get away with this. And now Twitter are following suit. They're also going to start using these labels to discredit and delegitimize journalists and news outlets that don't conform to U.S. hegemony, to Western imperialism, right? So just pulling up this picture again, look at that. U.S. government account, Russia state-affiliated media. Do you notice the difference in language? This is part of the programming and the conditioning. They try to subconsciously brainwash you by using different language for each country. So for Russia, it's state-backed or state-affiliated. And the most famous one, regime. Right? Syria doesn't have a government or an administration. It's a regime. North Korea has a regime. Venezuela has a regime. But of course, when we talk about Trump or Obama or George Bush or any other war criminal, oh, no. That's an administration, boy. It's an administration, which is a highly respected establishment. Yes. Right? The white countries have administration, very sophisticated, organized institutions. Oh, but the brown people, the people in the global south, they have regimes. They're authoritarian, totalitarian. It's all controlled. The difference in language is done on purpose. Okay? Make no mistake, man. These people are not fucking stupid. If they're implementing something like this in the name of transparency, they have thought this through, one would think, yes? So they know exactly what they're doing. This is done on purpose, and it's nothing new. So not just Facebook are doing this, not just Twitter, but this has always been the case. You turn on your television, you put on the BBC, you put on CNN, you put on Fox, you put on any Western news outlet, and they use the same language, the same qualifying terms. The Assad regime, the Saddam regime, Maduro regime. And even though George Bush is a war criminal, even though the United States has one of the most undemocratic societies on the face of this planet, even though people are living in a police state, mass surveillance, 24/7, oh, it's an administration, it's a government. Yeah, the Tory government, the Boris Johnson government, the Trump administration. Neoliberals keep telling us about how much of a fascist Trump is. Oh my God, he's literally Hitler. Okay, well, why aren't you calling it the Trump regime then? Why are you only using that language for countries in the global south? Seems a bit xenophobic to me, a bit racist, a bit ill-intentioned, no? This is no accident. It's no accident. And AOC is on board with this. AOC is on board with this, right? So Facebook and Twitter think that they can go around delegitimizing journalists, delegitimizing news outlets, delegitimizing people who stand up to U.S. hegemony, delegitimizing people who expose the predatory foreign policy enacted by the UK, the US, France, and other Western nations on the global south and countries in the global south. This is disgusting. And this does nothing to curb disinformation or make the case for transparency. It's just bullshit. This is absolute nonsense. This is a means to control the opposition. This is used as a means to quell resistance and to silence dissidents. That's what it's all about. Case in point, let me show you something else. Here we go. So look at this. Max Blumenthal, excellent, fantastic journalist from the Grayzone. I had the pleasure of having him on the show before, and he very eloquently encapsulated what I just said. Take a look at the double standard of these labels. No Western state media has been labeled by Twitter, only outlets backed by the quote-unquote evildoers. This isn't about fighting disinformation. It's about the U.S. national security state suppressing counter-hegemonic media. See here? Do you see this? China state-affiliated media. RT, Russia state-affiliated media. But the BBC have no label under their name. CBC News have no label under their name. And this is the case on YouTube as well. You'll see the same thing on YouTube. You go to RT's channel, they also have this label underneath. This broadcaster is in part or funded wholly by the Russian government. But you go to the BBC, you go to MSNBC, you go to any of the other Western outlets, nothing. Nothing. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird? It's almost as if they don't give a fuck about disinformation or transparency or nothing. It's almost as if they want to discredit and delegitimize news outlets and journalists that stand up to U.S. hegemony by trying to discredit them as being state-sponsored or working for a foreign government. And let me point out also the racist and xenophobic undertone, as if anything associated with Russia or China is automatically supposedly bad. Says who? What's wrong with Russia? What's wrong with China? Is Russia bombing the shit out of the planet? Does China have 900 military bases all across the planet? Are they running mass surveillance programs on the scale that you are? I mean, all of these nations do this thing, but look at the hypocrisy here. What's wrong with China? What's wrong with Russia? Why do you hate these countries so much? Once again, it's a continuation of this neo-McCarthyist nonsense, the brainwashing left over from the Cold War, and used as a means, of course, to delegitimize any kind of critiques. Do you see the irony? How the United States dares to call other governments totalitarian? They say that, they're repressive regimes and there's no journalistic freedom, no freedom of press. You can't criticize the government in Russia or in Syria or in North Korea or in China. They're so repressive. But when you're a journalist in the West, in the United States, they're going to come and stamp you with, he's backed by the Russian government. He's a foreign agent. Beware, watch out. He's not credible. Did you see the double standard? That doesn't sound like journalistic freedom to me. That doesn't sound like respect for the press. That doesn't sound like a real First Amendment. Quite the opposite, especially when you're trying to extradite journalists from other countries, going through enormous trouble, going to great lengths to bring Julian Assange to the US, a country he's never even been to. He owes you nothing, and then put him in jail because he exposed your war crimes. It's almost as if you hate journalists. Barack Obama and Joe Biden using the Espionage Act, which is meant for spies and traitors, to prosecute journalists, doesn't sound like a country that's really interested in upholding journalistic freedom. Quite the opposite. And so I find this very hypocritical and painfully ironic that they dare to accuse other countries of censorship and totalitarianism when they have the most extensive, unchecked mass surveillance program on the planet, violating their own citizens' rights and people abroad. Even their own allies, they're even spying on Angela Merkel's phone. Like, no one is safe. And then they want to turn around and tell you that, look, China, Russia, they're spying on everyone, they're collecting your data. What a load of shit. And so we come back to AOC. This woman who touts herself as a progressive, who claims that she is a leftist, and the ones who support her, who claim that they are leftists. You are okay with this? You should be screaming at the top of your lungs about this. You should be screaming at the top of your lungs. This is an outrage. This is insulting. It's defamation. It is going to be used as a means to discredit and slander journalists and people who stand up to U.S. imperialism, who stand up to U.S. hegemony and Western colonialism and disinformation. Remember, UK and the United States are the ones who fucking lied about weapons of mass destruction. I didn't see Russia, I didn't see China lying about weapons of mass destruction and then destroying the Middle East and setting it on fire. You want to talk about disinformation? That's disinformation. That's some lethal stuff. That's destruction on another level. And AOC supports this. She's glad. She's happy. She's happy that we are now going to slander, delegitimize, discredit, smear, and character assassinate people who dare to speak out and expose U.S. imperialism, something that she's complicit in because she supports coups in other countries. She supports brutal sanctions. She won't do anything about the wars or the troops that are being deployed to occupy other countries. Yeah, she's cool with everything, making her complicit. Why would she bother? Right? Why would she bother? And you would think that these Democrats who pretend to care so much about election integrity would be screaming about how unsafe and unsecure their voting machines are, that they shouldn't be using electronic voting machines in the first place and relying on paper ballots. No, not a word. But they're going to come and yell for 3 years about Russiagate and Russian interference and do nothing to mitigate that. You know why? Because it's bullshit. Unbelievable. So YouTube is doing this, Facebook is doing this, Twitter is doing this now. Do you see how these big tech companies, which control all of the news people get, do you see how these big tech companies are controlling society now? Most people get their news from big tech, from these social media websites. You have people in Silicon Valley now deciding who is a legitimate journalist and who isn't. You have people in Silicon Valley deciding now who can speak and who is not allowed to speak, who will be censored. And you want to come and tell me that our countries, African, Arab, Asian countries were totalitarian? Go fuck yourself. Eat shit. Don't forget, never forget, these big tech companies are an arm. They constitute an arm. They are an extension of the US surveillance state, of the intelligence communities. That is their sole purpose. Not only are they extremely proficient at collecting mass swaths of data, massive amounts of personal information and metadata about you, about me, about government officials, about the entire human population, but they are serving the interests of the intelligence agencies by spying on people illegally, cooperating with them, colluding with them, willingly, absolutely, every single one of them. And we know this for a fact. This is not even up for debate. Edward Snowden, Glenn Greenwald did a service to humankind by exposing this stuff, because we all knew it was happening, but if you talked about it, oh, you're a crackpot. But now we know you cannot even sit there and deny that. You can't even try and begin to deny that. It's irrefutable. So God bless Glenn Greenwald. God bless Edward Snowden for what they did. All of these tech companies are an extension of US intelligence agencies, and they work on behalf of the surveillance state. Okay? And now they are being used to silence dissidents, to silence criticism of US hegemony. Disgusting, absolutely disgusting. And you tell me this congresswoman who touts herself as a progressive, she's complicit with this and totally fine? Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. She got no shame. You know, for them, disinformation, oh, some dude in Congress said something mean about me, or Donald Trump tweeted some bullshit that nobody cares about. But it's okay for them to lie about wars. It's okay for the New York Times to lie about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and kill 1 million people, and then have a power vacuum and a conflict spill over into Syria and kill more people and empty half the country. It's okay for them to lie. It's okay for the Washington Post and the New York Times to lie about Morales allegedly rigging the election and then coming back and saying, oh yeah, we screwed up. It's okay for them to lie. It's okay for mainstream media to lie and to spread disinformation that kills people, that fucking murders people. It's okay for them to serve the interests of the military-industrial complex, but they're not going to be labeled as fake news. They're not going to have anything under their name that says that they're US-backed news outlets, which is exactly what they are. When you are serving the interests of the military-industrial complex and the Department of Defense, you are nothing short of US state-backed media. You are a propaganda outlet. You are serving the interests of corporatists and war hawks and liars in the intelligence community. So don't sit there and tell me you're some kind of respectable establishment or news outlet. You are a propaganda mouthpiece for these fucking war hawks and warmongers that mass murder people to try and steal their resources and occupy their land. But you ain't gonna see no label under their names. No. You're going to see labels under the names of people like Rania or me or the Grayzone, because we expose the war crimes and we expose the imperialism and we speak out against this colonialist bullshit, this white supremacist bullshit that is being imposed upon the global South. Now all of a sudden we're state-backed. So they can try and discredit people who tell the truth and smear us and character assassinate us for telling the truth. It's nothing new. Just like they used to call Martin Luther King a communist and keep a file a file this size on him at the FBI. And the same thing for Malcolm X. Anybody who dares to speak out against oppression, oh, they're a communist. They're working for Russia. Oh, they're working for China. When the US is the most undemocratic, the most totalitarian, the most oppressive nation on this planet, on the face of this fucking planet. Disgusting. And you call these people leftists? They're working with fucking right-wingers. They are encouraging and enabling and advocating for censorship and the smearing of journalists who are doing their fucking jobs, attacking us from the right. Fuck them. I don't owe these people respect. I don't owe them shit. And if you can't see that, these people are crypto neoliberals and they are advocating on behalf of the surveillance state, then you need to take your head out of your ass because you're next. Oh, you think they going after the right only? Oh, they coming for you next. Believe that.